Our central aim is to enable you to develop knowledge and attitudes and skills that are conducive to constructive involvement, cooperation and teamwork with others and will serve you well in future endeavors. To succeed, the process demands all of us a serious exercise in civic responsibility. For graduates looking to give something back, volunteering, either in the UK or overseas, is a popular option. Voluntary projects can cost anything from nothing up to a few £1,000s, and with that in mind, it is essential to look into the project carefully before signing on the dotted line. The great wolf is an extremely adaptable species and is one of those animal species that survived the last ice age. The great wolf's physical characteristics enabled it to adapt quickly to the harsh conditions of the ice age, and its cunning and adaptation helped it survive in the changing environment. With our current situation and the state of the global economy, there is a much lower chance of landing a new job anytime soon. And it's unclear when social distancing measures will end or what shape the economy will be in when you are able to return to work. China's war on particulate air pollution is causing more severe ozone pollution. According to the new research, there was so much particulate matter in the smog around Chinese cities that it helped to quell ozone production by acting as a sponge that collected chemical radicals. Demand for natural gas has grown internationally in recent years. in part because it has a smaller carbon footprint than coal and other fossil fuels. In Singapore, where the government has promoted increased use of natural gas, consumption has grown about ninefold in recent decades. In some places, natural gas consumption has expanded as public opinion has turned against nuclear power. The effects of soil erosion go beyond the loss of fertile land. It has led to increased pollution and sedimentation in streams and rivers, clogging these waterways and causing declines in fish and other species. Degraded lands are also often less able to hold onto water, which can worsen flooding. Sustainable land use can help to reduce the impacts of agriculture and livestock. A role of ionizers is to purify the air with the help of electricity. During this process, negative ions have created that discharge these ions into the air. In this case, they are attached to particles with a positive charge. Some of these harmful particles include smoke, bacteria and pollen. The reaction between these ions helps purify the air inside your room office. The most obvious change is that 46% of college undergraduates are now women. When I went there, it was only the third year that women had been admitted, and then seemingly grudgingly, about 70% of students were male, and if there was a woman tutor she must have been a male impersonator. Strange bedfellows, lamented the title of the recent letter to Museum News, in which a certain Harriet Sherman excoriated the National Gallery of Art in Washington. A huge proportion of the 200,000 free tickets were snatched up by homeless opportunists in the dead of winter, who then scalped those tickets at $85 apiece to less hardly A constellation is an area on the celestial sphere in which a group of stars forms an imaginary outline or pattern, typically representing an animal, mythological person or creature, or an inanimate object. The origins of the earliest constellations likely go back to prehistory. Orientalists, like many other 19th century thinkers, conceived of humanity either in large collective terms or in abstract generalities. Orientalists are neither interested in nor capable of discussing individuals. Instead, artificial entities predominate. Similarly, the age-old distinction between Europe and Asia or Occident and Orient Who do you think is the most glamorous person? A biotechnologist who led his company in international research, an ordinary welder who gained international fame through his work, or a photographer complimented widely for a series of photos? Such cross-protection is usually seen between two animals. But Gore studies the same sort of mutualism in microbes. He and his team demonstrated the first experimental example of that cross-protective relationship in drug-resistant microbes, using two strains of antibiotic-resistant E. coli bacteria, one resistant to ampicillin, the other to chloramphenicol. Domestication is an evolutionary, rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs and their flesh. Australia has one of the world's most important mining industries. It is a major exporter of coal, iron ore, gold and copper, and is self-sufficient in all minerals bar petroleum. Since the first discoveries, the coal in 1798, mineral production has risen every year in the decade to 1992 it doubled. To forgive an injury is often considered to be a sign of weakness. It is really a sign of strength. It is easy to allow oneself to be carried away by resentment and hate into an act of vengeance, but it takes a strong character to restrain those natural passions. The man who forgives an injury proves himself to be the superior of the man who wronged him. Quantum is the theory we had to have. During the 19th century, many advances were made in physics, but by the end of the century, it was backing itself into a corner. It would take a radical change in thinking to explain many of the paradoxes that had arisen, and quantum was the uneasy solution. Its ability to explain the previously unexplainable was startling and menacing. A group of business, education and government leaders has launched an initiative to grow the state's pool of tech workers. Sequence Health CEO Mike Castling, who chairs the newly formed Nebraska Tech Collaborative, says the state is losing jobs at an alarming rate because Nebraska companies are choosing to expand elsewhere or not at all due to a lack of qualified workers. Another method governments use to try and influence the private sector is economic planning. For a long time now, socialist and communist states have used planning as an alternative to the price mechanism, organizing production and distributing their resources according to social and strategic needs, rather than based on purely economic considerations.